computer. Oh, how come people are coming and I have to admit them? How come they don't automatically get admitted? Anybody know?
I think if they're dialing in, they might need to do it, or I'm not sure.
All right, Bob, where are you?
I'm at a campground near the Delaware Water Gap, and I have
Okay.
barely enough coverage so that I can get this.
Okay, good to have you. Okay,
Good to be here.
I see I made a mistake on the email. It said that the shear is starting 9:15. On the Zoom information on the top of the email, I said the shear will be at 9:10. So I'm going to talk a little bit about an issue that's related to the shear. I see people keep on admit. All right. So I'm going to just talk for a few minutes about something related to the shear to give everybody a chance to get here. The one of the topic that we're going to talk about is whether you say Magen Avos when you daven on the blacktop, which is a very interesting topic because it'll demonstrate or reflect I would call it the evolution of halacha. Evolution, not in the sense that halacha has changed, but halacha has developed, and there's different layers in how the halacha developed. So here, I have to get my annotator. Here's the annotator. Okay. And the mouse is on. So there's different layers in halacha. One of the svarim we're going to talk about tonight is the Maral Bach. This is the Maral Bach. I happen to have the sefer here. Inside the sefer, it has my father's name, Rav Chaim Mendel Luban, but it's written in my handwriting. This sefer was written by Rav Levi Ibn Chaviv. Maral Bach. There were in the time of the Beis Yosef, there were two seats of the Jewish community. There was the Jewish community in Sfas, and there was the Jewish community in Yerushalayim, and they were led by two different rabbanim. The Sfas community was led by Rav Yosef Karo, and before. A little bit earlier was led by his Rabbi, the Rabbi Rav. Rabbi Rav actually gave smicha to Rav Yosef Cairo, and the community in Yerushalayim was led by the Maral Bach, by this the Rav Levi Ibn Chaviv, and they had a lot of disputes in halacha. One of the most famous disputes was about the smicha. The Beis Yosef received smicha from his Rabbi, from the Rabbi Rav, and the Maral Bach held that you can't give smicha. And there was the issue was whether if it was the Chachmei Yisrael have a right to give smicha, and he wrote about a 20-page tshuva on this topic. So it was one of the earliest tshuva farm that I was exposed to, because I had a Rebbe in 10th grade, Rav Chatzkel Lichtman, who talked about Maral Bach with respect to Naziris, whether the Maral Bach has a definition of Naziris. There's a famous three-way machlokas. What is Naziris? Do you make is it a neder, or do you make yourself a nazir? Exactly how does it work? So the machlokas Maral Bach, the Mariba Bason, and the third party. So my Rebbe spoke often about the Maral Bach. Okay, I see now we're able to get started. It's 9:15. Okay, so the question is, do we say Magen Avos on the blacktop? Because if you see, if this is the Art Scroll Siddur, here in the Art Scroll Siddur it says, Ein omrim oso kishosim minyan shelo b'beis haknesses. You don't say Magen Avos unless you have a minyan in a shul. The first part, Vayichulu, you could say, but the bracha Okay, Avram, Magen Avos. This is all the bracha that we recite. Is this recited in the only with a minyan, or is it recited even without? So the pashtus is only recited in the shul. So on the blacktop, Bukhara, you shouldn't recite it. So that's what we're going to talk about, whether you should recite it or not. We'll see. It's a big machlokes. It's a big machlokes. Okay, I have to admit all. All right. There's a big machlokes about this issue, whether you should say Magen Avos or not. First, I thought, just explain what Magen Avos, what name, this bracha, Magen Avos, what is it? So it's called bracha Me'ein Sheva. The reason why it's Me'ein Sheva is because it is a miniature reflection of the Shemona Esrei. Shemona Esrei on Shabbos has 7 brachas. Normally during the week it has 19. But on Shabbos it only has 7. So this is Me'ein Sheva. It's like an image of the 7. It's not a full 7 because there's only one bracha here. This for opening bracha, but it encapsulates the 7 parts of Shemona Esrei. I tried to figure out on my own where the 7 parts were and how you divide it up, and I could not figure it out. So, but then I saw the Abu Draham, who was an early Rishon, explains where the 7 parts of the bracha are. So I have it here on the numbered and then on the side. Magen Avos is the first bracha of Magen Avram. L'chaim Mesim is the second bracha. L'chaim HaMesim. Hakel HaKadosh is the third bracha of Hakel HaKadosh. That part is easy. Haminiach Yamo B'Yom Shabbos Kacho is the fourth bracha, because in the fourth bracha we say Ritzeinu B'Mnucha Seinu. So that's the fourth bracha. Lefanav Navo B'Yer V'Fachad is the bracha of Ritzei, because in Ritzei it talks about that the Hashem is Avodah with Rabbi Sechel, that we should return the service into the Beis Hamikdash. So here it speaks about Lefanav Navo. By the way, I once read that the Mariel Diskin, when he used to say Lefanav Navo B'Yer V'Fachad, he almost fainted each week when he would say B'Yer V'Fachad, because he has such tremendous Yirah Shamayim. Then V'Noda L'Shmo is Modim, because Noda is Hodah, Modim Anach L'Lach. And finally, Adon HaShalom is the bracha of Sim Shalom. So that's Me'ein Sheva. And now, what's the reason why we say Me'ein Sheva? What's the plain reason? So the Gemara in Shabbos, and Daf Chaf Daled Amud Beis, the Gemara explains what's the basis for this bracha. So the Gemara says, okay, I'm going to skip parts of the Gemara here, but the Gemara says, it says, okay, I have to read the Gemara with you. The Gemara says, Rishuma Levi says, Yom Kippurim Shechalios B'Shabbos and Mispal Neil Tzarech Haskish Shabbos. When you say Ne'ilah, so you have to mention Shabbos, even though on Shabbos you don't have Ne'ilah, but if you're saying Ne'ilah on Shabbos, you have to add Shabbos. So the Gemara asks the question, there's another halacha that we hold like on Shabbos that comes out on Yantiv, the Shliach Tzibur Hayored Lifnei HaTeva. That means the Chazan who stands by the Teva. He doesn't have to mention Yantiv. Where is he mentioning Yantiv? There's no Chazar Sashatz. So it means he doesn't have to mention Yantiv in this bracha of Magen Avos. Shemali Shabbos and Shliach Tzibur. Because the reason why we say the bracha is only because of Shabbos, not because of Yantiv. So therefore, you don't have to mention Yantiv. So the Gemara says, so what's the difference? The Ne'ilah you also don't say because of Shabbos, you say because of Yom Kippur. So why do you mention Shabbos in the Ne'ilah? You don't mention Shabbos in Magen Avos. The Gemara says, Hachi Ashta Hasan B'din Hu Dafil B'Shabbos Nami Lo Tzarech Rabban Hu Detikni Mishum Sakana. Really, there's no reason why you should be making this bracha. The whole reason why you're making the bracha is for Sakana. And Rashi explains, what's the Sakana? that there's this bracha of Magen Avos. You say because of sakana. What is the sakana? So Rashi says the sakana is shliach tzibur. No, not here. Mishum sakana. Mazikim shalayu b'beis knesset shalano b'yish shalayu b'bate knesset shalano b'yishuv. What happened? Rashi says that their shuls were out in the woods someplace or in the fields, and there were mazikim that used to float around. These evil spirits that floated around near the shul, and it was dangerous to be alone. At night is when the mazikim would come out. Shonim said we don't have mazikim anymore, but at night there were mazikim would come out. So there were people that during the week, they would never come to shul because they were busy working. They daven Marav at home. But on Shabbos, they had a little extra time, so they would come to shul to daven Marav. But they would come late. As they come late, so everybody would leave the shul, and they would be left alone. They'd have to walk home alone through the field where the mazikim are. So if there's more than one person, then the mazikim can't do anything. But if a person by himself, it's dangerous. So in order to delay the end of the davening, they added on this bracha of Magen Avos. It adds an extra few minutes. So if somebody came late, it gives them a chance to catch up. That's what this Rashi says. The Gemara says that since the reason why you're saying Magen Avos has to do with Shabbos, because the Gemara, the mazikim only come on Shabbos. They don't come on Yantif. Shabbos is a more dangerous time, not on Yantif. So since the bracha has absolutely nothing to do with Yantif, that's why you don't add Yantif in the bracha. But in any event, the Gemara says that the Rabbanu the Kingdom Yishum Sakana. Rabbanu were masaking the bracha because it's dangerous, because of the mazikim. So now the first question is this bracha that they were masaking, and nowadays there's no more mazikim. So why do we still say the bracha? Because there's a principle. The Darash Minyan Tzarech Minyan Acher Hatiro. If Chazal made a takana, you cannot undo the takanas, even if the reason for the takana doesn't apply. So they made a takana that you have to say the bracha. So even though there's really no reason to say it anymore, but you still have to say it. So now there's a big machlokus rishonim whether or not this bracha is only said with a minyan, or is it said privately. So the Mordechai here says Isi Kasu B'Shem Rabbi. Mordechai was a rishon. In the back of your Gemaras, you have the Mordechai. The Mordechai quotes the Ravia. And the Rabbi said, the Rabbi, that's a Rosh Tevis. The Rabbi is Rav Avram Ben Yonah, I think, Halevi. The Rabbi says, the Lo Niskan El L'Shich Tzibur, U'Malkum Shem Minyan Ein L'Omro. The Rabbi says the bracha is only for the Shlich Tzibur, because the Gemara said before that Ayari L'Fnei HaTeva says the Ayari L'Fnei HaTeva. So it's recited by the person who's Yari L'Fnei HaTeva, that's the Chazan. So he says, you only say it with a Chazan, you only say it when there's a minyan. And then he says, "Vagonim paskel bein beyachid bein mitzibur." The Gaonim held that you say the bracha even the yechidus. It's not only mitzibur, but you say it even the yechidus. So there we have the first machlokus is whether you need a minyan for the bracha or not. The Tur paskins that as follows: the Avam Mashiach Tzibur bracha achsmein shal shehu magen avos b'dvar Elokeinu. And this is because of Avi Ezri. Avi Ezri is the same person as the Rabbi. The name of his sefer was Avi Ezri. Also, a yachid, an individual shouldn't say it, because the whole reason why they made the takana is because people dive in the field. They think because people would come late. So they wanted that he'll have time to finish while the Shlich Tzibur is still finishing up the end of the davening. Shlich Tzibur is the same Magen Avos, so the person will be able to catch up. So there's no reason to make the takana for a yachid. The yachid is not out in the fields. This is for the tzibur. When this can el b'tzibur can mash the shliach tzibur hayar l'fnei teva. The language of Gemara is masher that it's only b'tzibur because it says the shliach hayar l'fnei teva, and therefore shlo niska el b'tzibur. Amal shlo niska el b'shliach tzibur. So that's that. There's a machlokus, the Ravi and the Gaonim. Whether the Gaonim held that once they made the takana, they made it for everybody. They didn't make it just for the tzibur. But the Rabbi held that they only made it for a tzibur, for the shliach tzibur to say, and that's how the Tur paskins, and that's basically how all the Rishonim paskin. They paskin like the Ravia, that you only say it tzibur. Then this, as an aside, He says, "B'sefer Chasidim, Ma'aser l'Chassid Echad, Ra l'Chassid Echad." Sefer Chasidim, they say, it was written by Rabbi Yehuda Chassid. There was a Chassid who saw another Chassid who died, the Moso. He came to an apparition, came to him. Upana of Marikos, his face was green or pale. Amalei, Lama Panach Marikos says, "Why is your face pale?" Amalei, Minesha Yisi Medaber Vayichul B'Shosh Tzibur Hayomrim Osa. When the Tzibur was saying Vayichul, I used to talk. Uveberchas Magen Avos B'Dvaro Uvi Yiskado. He's finished with Shmon Esrei, so he thought it was like a free-for-all time. So he would talk during Magen Avos and Vayichulo, and the Yiskado was Kaddish. So that's why when he got to Olam Haba, they did a job on him. This is brought in the Torah, but the Shulchan Aruch makes a point of emphasizing this. The Shulchan Aruch says, "Ein ledaber b'shas she'omer vayichulu, v'lo b'shas she'omer shir tzibur mein sheva." You shouldn't talk during vayichulu and not during the when the Chazan says Magen Avos and the bracha. You should not engage in conversation. Okay, so there's a machlokus whether you say it only in shul or you say it only even privately. We paskin that you only say it in shul. That's how the Torah paskins, and that's how the Shulchan Aruch is going to paskin. The Shulchan Aruch says, okay, he says here, ein ledaber, but he said, that I just read to you, but he says, ein omer b'chsein shalosh, the basic son of v'aveim, the lack of time that the ma'achim level she nozakim. If you have a minyan by an avel, or you have a private minyan for Sheva brachos, you don't say Magen Avos, because the bracha was established for a tzibur in shul, and therefore you don't say, even though you have a minyan, but it has to be a minyan in shul. So now this brings us to the second shaila. It's true that according to Rabbi, you have to have a minyan, but does the minyan have to be in shul? So this is also a big machlokus rishonim. So the sefer that I showed you before, the Maralbach, has a long tshuva about this. He says the person that posed the shaila to him, "Ol shalta davar bracha mein sheva b'shulel Shabbos im yesh l'omra kishmisvam masar v'beis l'chasel v'beis avol." Do you say the bracha if you're at the home of an avol, or you're saying Sheva brachas? So you have a minyan, but you don't have, but you're not in shul. So the reason why the person asked the shaila is Yan ki shamata omrim sheina omra el daf kishmisvam v'beis l'knesses. The person asked the shul question because other people told him you only say it in shul. The person asked the question and said, I don't believe that it's only in shul. Why? Because he brought a raya, mishtikas haposkim zechrono levracha sheshashku eskiru zachil. The poskim don't say that it has to be in shul. They don't speak it out. So they don't speak it out. It means that it's not true. Otherwise, why wouldn't they mention it? So the Marabach goes through the shaila, and he says, basically what he says is it's a machlokus, whether you need a minyan in a shul or not. Because in the sefer, he says, no, that's not what I wanted. He says, all right, I'm not seeing what. Oh, here it is. He quotes the Rabbi. He says the Rabbi. He brings the Rabbi from the Lashon of the Rabbi. The Rabbi is what we saw in the Torah. That the Torah quotes the Rabbi that you need a minyan. So the Rabbi says, the Rabbi says, "V'zeh l'shono reisi kosuv b'shem Rabbi the lo niskana ela l'shliach tzibur u'v'makom shem minyan ein loro." So he says that it's only said by the when there's a shliach tzibur, when there's a minyan. So the Marabach's Medaik, he doesn't say only say when you're in shul. He says you only say when there's a minyan. So the Rabbi seems to hold you don't need a shul, you just need a minyan. But then he quotes other svarim that say clearly. He quotes the Rav Yitzchak Avulov, who was a Rebbe of the Beis Yosef. Beis Yosef often quotes Maria Avulov. Maria Avulov says that you has to be in shul. And I'll just show you the end of the tshuva. He says, "L'chein ani omer shemalakim sheisha minhag kavua la'omro ein l'shanas minhag." If the city has a minhag to say it, even without a shul, you should say it. Yeshem even go to little sasmabo. Hello, Rabbi, go to Baruch Chaim Shiksafti. If they have who to rely on, if they want to say it in a private minyan. Amnam be'ir chadasha or be'ir sheyesh lahem safek b'minig ein lomra. But if it's a new city and they don't know, or they don't know what the minig is, they shouldn't say it because the hatzim yonish safek bracha torah. Because it's a safek whether you were supposed to say it, so it's a safek bracha torah. So he says, Amnam b'nei garish svard lo yadati. I don't know. He was part of Garish Svard. He was chased out, expelled from Spain. He says, I don't know what the minig was in my parents. He garashti the katlusi the avonos. In my youth, I was expelled together with everybody else from Spain. So I don't know what the minig is. Amnam zakin shebehem gadol called b'nei dara Ari Avuav. The greatest of the generation was Maria Avuav. Haralana shekein haros gasos kifimash. That you should not say it without having a shul. So the Shulchan Aruch, and he brings also a Rivash that says the same thing. So the Shulchan Aruch basically paskins like that, a latter opinion in the Marabach, that the Maria Avuv says that you shouldn't say it unless there's a shul, and therefore you would not recite it if it's out of a shul. Sheva bebeis chasanim. If it's a house of a chassan when you're making Sheva brachas, you don't say it, or avelim, or it's a Shiva house. They have a private minyan, like a time in the Machal Gav because there's no reason to say it there. The whole reason we're saying it is because we want people who are out in the field to have a chance to finish davening. So there's no value to say if you're davening in the Abel's house, you're not out in the field. It's only the shuls that were out in the field. So therefore, there's no reason to say it. That's how the Shulchan Aruch passes. So if you got up to here and you wanted to decide whether you should make a bracha, whether you should say Magen Avos on the blacktop, I would have said absolutely not, because the Shulchan Aruch passes that you don't say it in a base Aval and a base Chassan, because it's not in shul. He's following the opinion of the Maria Avuav, even though the Rabbi disagrees. But he says, he says, if there's no minig, you should follow the opinion of Maria Avuav and the Rivash, and you don't say it if it's not in the shul. So therefore, it seemed to be an open and closed case. There's no shaila. You can't say Magen Avos on the blacktop because you only say it in the shul. You don't say it bebeis chassan v'aveil. That's how the Shulchan Aruch passes. So, but then you have to make sure you learn all the things on the side. Here's the Taz. The Taz is the left-hand commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, and he says, "Mikol makom near those in Shekov," and this Taz throws a whole monkey wrench into the shaila, and this is the whole shaila revolves around this Taz. The Taz is Mikol near those Shekovim makom mispalo al eza yamin. People who set up a minyan for a few days, the Moshe also be read them like they did by the Yerid. They used to have a few times a year, they would have a market, a fair, and people would come from all over, the Jews and the Goyim, and they would bring things to sell, and everybody would converge, and that's how they did. They did a lot of business by the Yerid. So the Jews stuck together at the Yerid. It was like a big operation. So there was a lot of the Gedolim used to meet at the Yerid. And they used to make the konas of the Arba Aratzos. They established many of them by the Yeridim. It was a place not only of commerce but of halachic exchange. So at the Yerid they had minyanim. So the Magen Taz says, what do they do at the Yerid? Do they say Magen Avos? So he says if they get together to daven, those who should come and makom mispalei yom, they establish a place. The Moshe Lasos where you read them. It's like a shul, and they could say the bracha. So here we have now a new basis. To say, even though the Shulchan Aruch paskins that in the base of Aval or Sheva brachas you don't say Mein Sheva, but if you have a place that you establish for davening for a longer period of time, then the Taz says that you would say it, So the blacktop, we've been davening the blacktop now about 3 weeks. So it's a makom kavua for davening. We have 3 minyanim a day on the blacktop. So even though it's not a shul, so you can easily argue that according to the Taz, you should have to say Me'ain Sheva. And the Shiloh really came up when they started davening in Lakewood on the porches. It came up the same Shiloh. They're davening on the porches. Everybody goes out to their porch. That way they practice social distancing. Could they say Me'ain Sheva? Because they were davening on the porches for weeks at a time. Are they able to say Me'ain Sheva? So from the Taz, you would get the impression that you could say it on the blacktop. But the Mishnah Brura says, he quotes the Tavs, this is the Mishnah Brura, he says, he adds an extra word here. If they have a kviyas together, like they have by the Yerid, v'yesh Sefer Torah etzlam, and they have a Sefer Torah, so then it's like a shul, and they have a kviyas, and they could say Magen Avos. So now we have a new condition, that even though you don't have to be in a shul, you could be in a place where you daven regularly, but you have to have a Sefer Torah, because otherwise it's not daimel or basic ness, it's not similar to a shul. Where did the Mishnah Berurah pick this up from? The Taz, which is the source of this Mishnah Berurah, doesn't say anything about a Sefer Torah. So where did you get it from? You always have to have a source. So the Mishnah Berurah got it from, so you look on the bottom, the footnotes. Yud Tes is Aleph Resh. Aleph Resh is El Yerabah. So El Yerabah, I happen to have the El Yerabah at home. So the El Yerabah says, Betaz Mavur, because Sheyesh Kviyas Aizi Yamim Omrim, the Taz says that if you have a kviyas for a few days, you say, Magen Avos, the Tzarachom, the Mairi, Kishiyeh Sefer Torah, the below Sefer Torah, Lo Mikri Kavua. It's talking obviously where there's a Sefer Torah, because without a Sefer Torah, there's no kviyas. You have to have a Sefer Torah. So that's where the Mishnah Berurah got it from. That if you don't have a Sefer Torah, you don't have a kviyas, and therefore you should not say Magen Avos. So now we go back again. First I thought that you should not say Magen Avos because you only have to say it in shul. Then I thought, based on the Taz, it says if you have a kviyas, if you do a daven for a certain place for a while, so then you could say it. So I thought you go back to that you would say it. Then I see now the El Yerabah who says they have a Sefer Torah, so there's no Sefer Torah on the blacktop. They bring it out in the morning, but they don't keep it there. And when the Davi Marav on Shabbos, they don't have a Sefer Torah. So now, it's like ping pong. So now we go back and say, okay, no Magen Avos based on the El Yerabah. Comes along the Moshe Feinstein, and he shoots another salvo of the ping pong back and forth. He says, Ubei Sekneses Kabul Tefillah Ma'ariv B'Shabbos. If you're daving Ma'ariv, basically it's Kabul Tefillah Ma'ariv. If you're daving Ma'ariv in a shul in Shabbos, Ba'afamakum Kabul B'Bayis Echad, and even if the Kviyas is in a house, in other words, there's a Kviyas Friday night, they have a minyan to daven Kabul Shabbos. There are many such minyanim in town, I am told. People that don't want, it's too hard to walk so far, they want to get home earlier, whatever the reason is. So they have a kviyas Friday night, they daven by somebody's house. So if you have a kviyas in somebody's house, when I was in Eretz Yisrael, my father was on sabbatical. He lived in Rechavia, and right near us lived Rav Unterman, who was one of the Rabbi Rashis. He wasn't the first, but Herzog was the first. He was a Rabbi Rashi, and he was rather old and he couldn't walk. So he used to make a minyan Friday night at his house. I attended many times Rav Unterman's minyan at his house Friday night. I was young and foolish. I didn't speak to him in learning. I should have. He was an Adam Gadol. So Rav Moshe says if you have a Friday night minyan, what is that? If you have a Friday night minyan, so Rav Moshe says you have to say Bracha Me'ain Sheva. So he says, what about the El Yerabah Sefer Torah requirement? So he says, Af Shem, the Machzor Shekel, Prima Garden, Mistapik Me'ain Shem Sefer Torah, even though the Machzor Shekel also quotes the El Yerabah and the Prima Garden, they say maybe you need a Sefer Torah. Shimkein Ein Lomo Idal Kriya Sumar Blavado. So that means if you without a Sefer Torah, it's not enough to have a Kriyas. You have to have a Kriyas with a Sefer Torah. The Ramosha says, Ein Nagin Kain, Ella Omrim. It's not true. We don't hold like the El Yerabba, we don't hold like the Pri Megadim. Even if there's no Sefer Torah, you would say Magen Avos. By the way, most contemporary poskim would not disagree with an El Yerabba. The El Yerabba lived about 250 years ago. They maybe would disagree with a poskim that lived 20 years ago or 30 years ago. But they wouldn't start up with the El Yerabba. He quotes the El Yerabba, the Pri Megadim, and the Machzor Shekel. Those are three giants of Sakalacha. They lived between 200 and 300 years ago. But Ramosha was not afraid. I mean, he felt that he had the authority. Even though Ramosha was a super anav, extremely modest, he was Kishmo Keinu. The Ish Moshe Anav Mikol Adam. Moshe Rabbeinu was the most modest person. Ramosha was also the most modest person. Very unassuming. I don't know how many of you saw Ramosha. I was able to see Ramosha. So Ramosha, but he said he held that he had all of Shas and Poskim on his fingertips, and he had tremendous mastery. So he felt that he has a right to express his opinion. So he says we're not like that because Hatliya b'Sefer Torah lo movens u'tzarchi and taimo. I don't understand why it should matter if you have a Sefer Torah. If it has to do with Kriyas, what does it matter if there's a Sefer Torah? Even if there's no Sefer Torah, if you have a Kriyas is a Kriyas. So Rav Moshe says that you would be even without a Sefer Torah. So now we go back again. On the blacktop, according to the Mishnah Brura and the El Yerabba, there's no Sefer Torah, so you won't say Magen Avos. But if you follow Rav Moshe Feinstein, who was the Posek Hador in America, he was the greatest Posek in America in the last 50 years. So a quarter longer maybe. So if you follow Rav Moshe, so you should be able to say Magen Avos on the blacktop, even though there is no Sefer Torah. However, there's another condition that the Eishel Avram says, and the print is so small, even I can't see it, but he says that near the She'enzos Kiyim B'Shekvei Kamiyam Ritzufim. He says you only this halacha I want to show you that Rav Moshe's position is not universally accepted for a different reason. He says the Eishel Avram, this is printed in the back of Shulchan Aruch. He says that you only say Magen Avos if you daven continuously in a place. Whereas the Taz says if you daven for a few days, like by the Yerid, you say Magen Avos. So the Eishel Avram says that's only if you daven regularly. Rav Moshe's Friday night minyan, the Eishel Avram would not subscribe to. He would say that you would not say Magen Avos because you come there once a week. That's not enough to require saying Magen Avos. But Rav Moshe obviously didn't all the way. So Rav Moshe held, number one, you don't need to say Sefer Torah, and number two, Rav Moshe held that it doesn't have to be continuous. So l'chara, this shaila, whether you should say on the blacktop, will be dependent on this machlokas between Rav Moshe and the El Yerabba and the Mishnah Brura. However, Rav Usher Weiss, I'll skip a little bit because otherwise I won't get up to it. Rav Usher Weiss has a beautiful tshuva about this topic, and Rav Usher Weiss says, I think somebody's is unmuted in the background there. Rav Usher Weiss says, he quotes the Shulchan Aruch and he quotes the El Yerabba and he quotes Rav Moshe Feinstein. So he says, the Taz says that you could say that if you kovei a makom for a few days, you could say it. So Rav Usher Weiss says, so l'chara, if you're diving on the blacktop or you're diving in a backyard and you're diving there every day, Eza Yamim, for a number of days, so then you should be able to say Magen Avos. So Rav Usher Weiss says a brilliant svara why he holds it's not true. From the poskim we see that it's not enough to have a minyan, you have to have a basic nessus. The Kevin Deacon Takana Hayishum, but the Knesset Hayum Michutz Yishuv, Hayus Takana, Lasi Basic Knesset Base, the Bais Levad, Tikling Amar Bachazu. The reason why the Shulchan Aruch holds it has to be in a shul and not in the base oval is because the whole Takana was made for a shul, because people used to dive around in the woods. It says V'ash Bishban Einish Ein Kansa Takana Kam Mikom Kam Ishno Zazim Mikoma. But and even though nowadays we don't have a sakana, but we still say the bracha. He says so the poskim mechadish, if you in order to be called a shul, you don't have to stay daven there all the time. Just a few days enough. He says but it has to be called a shul for a few days. Now, it's not enough that it's not just that if you dive in there a few days, then you could say Magen Avos. It has to be that you made it into a shul for a few days. You can't make something a shul for one day. So it has to be a base oval. The base oval is not a shul. It's a base oval. You're diving there just for the oval, so that's not a shul. But he says, but it's true you can make like by the Yeredim. Where you read them, the Yeredim, they made a room into a shul. But there it's kasher hamona Yehudim sochim halchol yirid hayumiyachidim makom misuyim tzilasum chayimei yirid. They designated one room to use for davening. Okay, mitam zani posu choshana shana the hamonim shenosim b'tkubas lekayis lefosh mekomos rabim b'magonos shenishkru ayidei Yehudim and ogim lasasu yeah sheyesh gomer b'loshas b'magonos. People go for the summer to a bungalow colony. And in every bungalow colony, they have a place where they daven. Usually, it's a casino. And during the week, they use the casino for other things also. But it's also serves as a shul. So, Kenny Chicago basic Knesset Museum, since they established it for a shul, so then you can say Magen Avos. The Afim is found beginning Sibarias of Rechov Shalir, even though people are davening in the backyards, or davening in the street, or davening in the porches, or davening on the blacktop. Basic You can't call a blacktop a basic nessus. And I didn't say you can't call it a basic nessus because there's basketball hoops, because we used to have a shul in a gym with basketball hoops. We were in RPOY for many years. And the truth is, whether or not you would say Magen Avos when we were in RPOI, according to the Eshel Avram that says that it has to be consecutive days, we shouldn't have said Magen Avos. But Rav Moshe says you can say Magen Avos even if it's not consecutive. But Rav Moshe Weiss is saying it has to be a place that's called a shul. But you can't say their backyard is a shul because it's being used for other purposes. And you can't say street is a shul. And you can't say a porch is a shul. People are using it for all sorts of other things. So even though you daven there for a few days, that does not make it into a shul. So therefore, if you're davening on the blacktop, Rav Shewai says it's not a shul. And if it's not a shul, it doesn't matter that you have a kvias to daven. Either we're there already 3 weeks, and maybe we'll be there longer. But you only can say Magen Avos in a shul, because again, the original takana was because in the shuls they were out in the woods or out in the fields, and people would come late. And then if they came late, they would leave late, and there would be nobody to walk them home. And then mazikim were out rampaging in the fields Friday night, so therefore they wanted to make sure that they shouldn't walk home alone. So therefore they masakin and say Magen Avos. But it was a takana specifically for shuls. So even though the Taz says that if you have a Yerid and you dive in a room for a few days, it's called, you could say Magen Avos, but that's only because it's considered like a shul. You designated a shul for a few days. If you designate a shul for a few days, so then you could say Magen Avos. But you can't say that a basketball court, outdoor basketball, indoors you could, but outdoor basketball court, you can't say that is a basic nessus or the parking lot. It's not a basic nessus or people's backyards. You can't say it's a basic nessus, and therefore you should not say Magen Avos. That's a Rabbi.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The porch, the backyard are individuals decision to make a minyan for a community, for themselves and their friends. But this minyan is under the auspices of the shul. The shul schedules it, the shul makes the rules, the shul provides the table.
Okay.
Does that make it the extension of the shul, even though it's not a physical building?
Okay, I hear. That is a very, very interesting point. I didn't think about that. I don't know. We'd have to ask Rosh Weiss what he thinks. My inclination is that he's still going to say that a basketball court that's used, except for when they're davening there, they continue to use it as a basketball court. And even when the school's out, kids come and play there all the time. And you can't, if you're in a hotel and you designate a room, you can say that this room it has a feeling of a shul. But you can't, there's no feeling of a shul, and at least that would be my opinion. I hear what you're saying. It's an excellent point. What did you want to say, Robert? You wanted to say something?
Same point exactly.
Oh, the same point. Okay.
Next week, they're going to have a day camp there all day.
Okay. Well, so until they have the day camp, maybe you could. Okay, it's 2 against 1. Two say that you could say. I think that you shouldn't say. So we'll have to ask the rabbi what we should do.
Wait, Rabbi Luban, it's Yaakov. What about when you were in the parking lot, and the parking lot was excluded before you went back into the building, but when it was exclusively used for that?
Okay, it's okay, good. It's similar type of svara that it's a parking lot, nobody else can use it. It belongs to the shul. I still don't think. To me, it does. It's still the main time is it's got to be a basic nessus. It's got to have a feeling of basic nessus, and if it's used primarily for other things, it's still a parking lot, even though we put up cones. And I don't know if you can even make a shul outdoors. I mean, we talked last week that you're really not supposed to daven outdoors. It's b'shas chak that we're davening outdoors. We're not supposed to daven in a makom paretz. You're supposed to daven in a fenced-in area. Okay, I hear what you're saying, but now you know what the issues are. So now I'll show you some more examples. What happens when you go to a hotel for a weekend bar mitzvah, and at the weekend bar mitzvah they pick a room where they're going to daven. So is that enough of a kviyas to be considered a shul that you should be able to daven, and especially if it's a dining room, but when they daven there, they use it as a shul, but when they don't daven there, they use it as another eating area. So my Rabbi and Rosh Yeshiva, Shmuel Kamenetsky Shlita, one of his talmidim wrote a magnificent svarim with his psakim. So he says, Malcolm. First, he says a bunch of things. Malcolm Kabul Tefillah Rakbei Shabbos Feinshon Sefer Torah. If people have a Friday night minyan, who could go minyan, misagenes b'chol el Shabbos bebeis. Okay, they made a minyan in somebody's house who's elderly, like they made by Rav Unterman. So Shmuel's paskins einam brachas mein shalosh. You shouldn't say brachas mein shalosh, because if it's not because of the Eish Avram that says it has to be every day. And there are those that say that you could say Magen Avrahos. Who is that? On the bottom he says Ramosha Feinstein, because Ramosha said that if you have a Friday minyan in somebody's house, you could say Magen Avrahos. So, and I want to point out something else, that Rav Asher Weiss, his svara, that it has to be considered a shul in order to say Magen Avrahos. It's not enough just that you daven there a few times, but it has to be transformed into a temporary shul. Rav Moshe obviously didn't hold that way, because Rav Moshe says that in a person's house where they organize, that's Rav Moshe's case. Rav Moshe says they organize a minyan for a zaken, and they daven there Friday night. He says, Af makom kavua b'bayis echad tzarach omer brachas mein shalosh. Does he say they organize for a zaken? He doesn't say it, but he says
Mein Sheva.
What?
Mein Sheva, not Mein Shalosh.
Mein Sheva. Oh, Mein Sheva. Yeah, you're right. So
yeah, but one quick question, Rabbi Luban. I mean, the bracha of Mein Sheva is the Rishonim. I think it's Rabbi Yerucham that brings down that it's exactly the same reason. It's Pnei HaMazikin applies not only to Magen Avrahos, it applies as well to Baruch Hashem Yolam Amen V'Amen as well. And there they said specifically the reason why that they said Baruch Hashem Yolam Amen V'Amen is because of the Mazikin, because they used to daven specifically in the Sados at that point. And the takana is exactly Hainu Hach in both cases. that the reason is both cases in Pnei HaMazikin for Friday night Magen Avos, and it's also for Baruch Hashem Yolam Omen V'Yomein. And clearly they davened in the field. So it's very
But
difficult.
that was even in the weekday.
Yeah, they daven even on Shabbos too. They daven all the time in the week.
No, but we say Baruch Hashem Olam even during the week. It's not limited to Shabbos. The Gemara in Shabbos, I don't know. You got me, but I don't. The Gemara in Shabbos says that this issue of Mazikim is only Friday night. Because that's what the Gemara says. The reason why we don't, even if it's Yantif, you don't add Yantif in because Yantif is not Goreim the Bracha because there's no Mazikim on Yantif. The Mazikim come only on Friday night.
Yeah, but the takana was for the same purpose. That on Friday night they extended the davening so people who came late should be able to come together, which is exactly the same reason that they instituted Baruch Hashem Yolam Amen V'Yomein. So presumably they didn't want to introduce two takanas for this, so they only had one. But the point was,
but they made the takana because the shuls were outside the city.
They were in the field.
In the field.
Never mentioned in the Gemara.
They're no different. They were no different than the blacktops that we have now in terms of the fact that they were arai. There was nothing that was miyachi them for tefillah other than the fact that people sat down or they were koveya placed to daven in the field. They could have stopped in here. They could have davened 50 feet away from there. It didn't make a difference. It was the sada.
How do you know?
That's what I see. That Luban Tosfos brings down as well. There's Tosfos, I think Brachas quotes it. He says that they used to daven in the field, so they used to go and they used to wait for them to come back. And that's why they waited. I can show you inside.
But I just showed you that everybody says that that's a machlokas, whether it's enough to have a minyan or it has to be in a basic knesses. We paskin has to be in basic knesses. That's the way the Shulchan Aruch paskins.
All the minyanim in the old days, in the time of the Gemara and afterwards, they daven in the field. They didn't daven in the basic.
But you can't argue with the Shulchan Aruch psak.
That was their basic knesses.
Yeah, so but you see that it wasn't that you don't say it since it's not kavua for basic nesses, you can't say Baruch Shem Olam. You don't say Mein Sheva. That's how Shulchan Aruch paskins. When you're asking about Mazikim, I don't know. I have to look it up. But Lamaisa that the Rabbi held like you held that you don't need a minyan. You don't need a basic nesses. But the Shulchan Aruch paskins you do need a basic nesses. So that's Rav Asher Weiss's point. He's saying that a black top's not a basic nessus. Rav Moshe Feinstein, though, obviously doesn't hold that way because he says that you have a Friday night minyan in somebody's house. You could say Mein Sheva, even though the whole week it's not used for that purpose. Okay, I want to show you one more element that plays into this nix. I also want to show you the Shmuel Kamenetsky says that if you have convention b'malon, shemispal shishi or Shabbos yom rishon yichol omer berachos mein sheva. Avirako Shabbos yom rishon b'vaying omer. Shmuel says this is his judgment. He says if you're using the room only for Shabbos and Sunday, then you would not say mein sheva. But if you used it Friday, Shabbos, and Sunday, then you would, because his sense is that it has to be at least 3 days. How did he know 3 days? I don't know, but that's what I'm showing you that you see that the definition of when does it become a basic nessus. If that's the idea that you by designating it, the Taz says you designate it because of basic nessus. It becomes difficult to pin it down exactly. What do you need that should be a basic nessus? So there's one issue is do you need a Sefer Torah so it should be a basic nessus? And then the second issue is how long do you have to use it for? Is it enough 1 day, 2 days, 3 days? Does it have to be consecutive days? So all these shilas are because it's difficult to pin down what's called a basic nessus. But let me show you.
The base level, don't they say you have to line 3 times from a Sefer Torah? Isn't similar?
So therefore what?
There's a million that you're supposed to lengthen.
You're not supposed to take the Sefer Torah out. It's not a covenant for the Sefer Torah to take it out only 1 time.
So 3 times makes it a kaviyah, similar to what he's saying over here. You need 3 times to make a kaviyah.
But the Shulchan Aruch says in base Avol you don't say Mein Sheva.
No, I'm not talking about Mayan Sheva. I'm just saying that the same, you're asking where he gets the idea of three, and I'm saying that the idea of three.
Oh, you want to
possibly
say
comes from-
that's the source for the idea of three. I hear it. Okay, very good. Josh, you're saying good. Okay, so now last piece is like this. The Ben Ish Chai, who was the Rav of Baghdad, right? I believe it was Rabbi Yosef Chaim. He lived in the 1800s, and I think he died in the beginning of the 1900s. So, and he wrote the Ben Ish Chai, which is the Sfardim learn the Ben Ish Chai regularly. It was interwoven of halacha and drush. And he also wrote a sefer on Agadata called Yachal Boaz. He was the accepted leader of the entire community in Baghdad, even though I'm sure there were other rabbanim, but he was so highly respected that everybody deferred to him. So he writes in the Ben Ish Chai, Birchas Me'ein Sheva, Eini katam shalom hasham sheniska b'shvil ha'machim v'eskedesh v'soda. The main reason why you say Baruch the main Sheva is not for the reason that it says in the Gemara. The Gemara says it's because of people in the fields and it's a sakana. That's not the main reason. Well, how can he say that? In mystical thought, there's a very important purpose of main Sheva. The Ein Sheva is like Chazar Sashatz. We don't say Chazar Sashatz by Ma'ariv. The Rishonim say the reason why we don't say Chazar Sashatz is because originally Ma'ariv was only a Rishus. It wasn't the Chova. It wasn't obligatory. So therefore they weren't masaking Chazar Sashatz. Because the purpose of Chazar Sashatz initially was to be mighty people who don't know how to daven. So since you weren't required to daven Ma'ariv, so you didn't know how to daven. So you just didn't daven Ma'ariv. It wasn't such a big problem. And once they did, even after they made it into a chova, since it was established without chazar shatz, so they didn't do chazar shatz. But the Ben Ish Chai saying on Shabbat the whole week you don't have Mein Sheva, but on Shabbos you say Mein Sheva because it's b'makom chazara. V'chein gamin mispal siver beis chasam avel kiyosei shein shesei v'torah. So therefore, even if you're going to daven by a beis avo or by a Sheva brachos. And even if there's no Sefer Torah, Chayavim Lomar Brachos Mein Shalosh, you have to say the Mein Sheva. You have to say Mein Sheva. So he's paskening against the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch says this piece that he just said, the base of Chasam Avelim, you have to say Mein Sheva because it's like Chazar Sashatz. So it's against. First of all, it's against the Gemara because the Gemara says the reason is because Sakana, and he's saying there's a new reason, and it's against Shulchan Aruch. How can he pass it against the Gemara and against the Shulchan Aruch? And then he says, "V'chein pasha minig b'yar kodesh Yishalayim la'omra b'chol makashim spal masara." And this is the minig in Yishalayim that they say no matter who they're davening, they get daven in the streets. They'll say Mein Sheva. Avol b'shein shav sefer Torah. He went out of sefer Torah. So where did he get this from? So here he tells us where he got it. V'zeh minig nispashet mizman Rabbeinu HaRashash Zal. The minute comes from the Rashash. Who is the Rashash? What does it stand for? There's a Rashash in the back of the Gemara. That's Rav Shimon Shterman, I think. He was a wealthy businessman.
Rav Shmuel Strashon.
Oh, Strashon. Okay, thank you. But this is, the Rashash is Rav Shmuel Sharabi. And he was a great Mekubal who lived in the 18th century. So he says that he's passing connected the Gemara and connected the Shulchan Aruch that you should say, and that's where the Ben Ish Chai takes it from the Rishon Sharabi, not Rishmuel. But he takes it from Rishon Sharabi that he paskin, he was a Makobel, and he paskin you should say it, so therefore we're going to say it. So where does he have the right to argue on the Gemara and on the Shulchan Aruch? So he says in the Kaf HaChaim, he says, Amnon Kolzel fi Pshat. This Pshat, he's quoting on the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch says you don't say it in Beis Avol and Beis Chasan. That's according to the Pshat in the Gemara that you do say because it's Sakana. But Kvar Kasafti Le'el, the Chol Divi of Ein Zashing Where I'm Sidvaram Apisod. That everything in the Chazal, there's deeper layers. V'gam harizal b'shar hakavanas nasan tam b'sol the bracha mein Sheva, and the Rizal gave an explanation for the purpose of the bracha mein Sheva. Shetzarach Omar achat tefillah Shabbos kamo she'omar chazara achat tefillah Shabbos shachas u'mincha. Where the Rashash got it from was from the Arizal. The Arizal said that there's another purpose of the Gemara only tells you the most obvious reasons, but there are other reasons that are more mystical. I don't know why this is such a mystical reason. It's because they wanted to have, maybe because I don't know why Shabbos is different than during the week. During the week, they weren't worried about Chazar Shatz. But Shabbos, they were worried about Chazar Shatz. The bottom line is that the Rashash says that since the Arizal held that you should say Mein Sheva, and even if you're not in a shul, so therefore we say Me'ain, and even if there's no Sefer Torah, that's why we say Me'ain Sheva, because there's this other reason.
What about Yom Tov Shechal b'Shabbos?
What about it?
Yom Tov Shechal b'Shabbos. It's a Yom Tov Shmon Esrei. There's no way there's no Chazar Sashat because it's a different davening. In fact, according to some, the whole takana that we say it, according to some opinions, is because of that specifically, because of those few Yom Tovim where there is no Vayachulu in davening.
Okay, I hear you're asking another good question. I don't know. So the question is this and the Ben Ish Chai it paskins this way, that even if you daven bebeis chasanim and avelos, and there's no Sefer Torah, you still should say, and no matter where you're davening, you go into a room someplace and you daven, you're required to say Me'ain Sheva. So is that, does anybody follow this halacha? So Rav Asher Weiss, in his Sheva, which is too late now for me to show you, but he says that there is a klal that if the Mekubalim argue with Poskim, Mishnah Berurah says we follow the Mekubalim. It's amazing. You would think the other way, but where the Arizal argues with other Poskim, the halacha follows the Arizal. So if the Arizal disagrees with the Poskim that say that you only say it in a shul, the rule should be that we follow their Arizal. However, Rav Asher Weiss says that once the Beis Yosef paskin that in a Beis Oval you don't say Me'ain Sheva, so that he sealed the door on the Shaila. It's one thing if the Arizal argues on Magen Avram or the Taz, but the Beis Yosef was the final word. And once the Beis Yosef paskin that you don't say it in a Beis Chasan, then it doesn't matter that the Arizal held otherwise. That's what he says. Where did he say that here? He says, he says, but he says, but when there's a machokes of Kabbalah and the poskim, you go after the Mekubalim. But he says, he closed the gate. It's the end of the story. You can't, it's not open to discussion anymore, which is not the opinion, obviously, of the Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai held that you should say Me'ain Sheva, not like the Shulchan Aruch in a private home. I didn't put it in here, but Rav Yosef has a long discussion about this because the Ben Ish Chai proves that you follow the Mekubalim, because in Yerushalayim the minhag is to say it even when you're not in a shul. That's the minhag in Yerushalayim, and that minhag is quoted in other places. It's quoted by Rav Chil Michal Techashinsky, one of his svarim. So the poskim bring so that's the Ben Ish Chai's raya that we follow the Arizal, we follow the Rashash, because in Yerushalayim that's the minhag. Why do they do that in Yerushalayim? Because they're following the minhag of the Arizal. The Rav Yosef says that's not why they follow that. They do that in Yerushalayim. In Yerushalayim, the whole city is considered like Ir Sheyesh Bo Sfarim. Wherever you are in Yerushalayim, it's like you have a Sefer Torah. You don't need to have a Sefer Torah. The Kedusha is so great it permeates the whole Yerushalayim. And he says that, and Adrabah, you see, it was the minyan Yerushalayim and no place else. So you see that the position of the Arizal was not niskabel, because it only did it in Yerushalayim. They didn't do it in the rest of Eretz Yisrael. So this is a back and forth machlokus. I saw in my search of the internet, I found there this question about whether or not you should say Magen Sheva on parking lots. So many of the poskim said that you should not. The same way Rav Asher Weiss paskins, that's how Rabbi Felder paskins in Lakewood, and others, and Rav Yosef's son, Rav Yitzchak Yosef paskins that way. But others argue that you see that there's a whole bunch of uncertainties here. First, the fact that you need a basic nesses is a machlokas rishonim. That's what the Marabach says. The Rabbi holds you don't need a basic nesses. The Ariavu holds that you do need a basic nesses. So right away, it's open to discussion whether you need a basic nesses. And whether you need a Sefer Torah is also machlokas. The Eli Rabbi says you do need a Sefer Torah. But the Prima Rabbi says maybe you don't need a Sefer Torah. So that's also up in the air. And then thirdly, whether it has to be in a shul altogether, according to Mekubalim, based on the Arizal, doesn't have to be in shul. So therefore, I saw somebody by the name of Rabbi Meisels. I don't know who he is. He said he writes that he's part of a bezin of Bnei Brak. They felt that you should say it with even you're davening outside. That's how that bezin baskin in Bnei Brak. That you should say it when you're davening outside, because they were mitzdarif the position of the Arizal. But okay, but there you have the layer. Rav Asher Weiss his position is that you could only say Sheva if it's a place that becomes a shul. It can't. It's not just a place where you're davening. It has to be a place that becomes a shul, and if it's used for other things, it doesn't become a shul. And therefore he holds that he holds that the Beis Yosef pasuk is not like the Arizal, so you can't rise up against the Beis Yosef. But I showed you that Rav Moshe Feinstein says that even if it's a person's house and use it just Friday, according to Rav Moshe Feinstein, it would seem Rav Moshe Feinstein doesn't seem to agree with Rav Asher Weiss. It would seem that you don't need to have a place that's designated as a shul. It's once a week. They use it as the kitchen, or they use it as the dining room in the house. So once a week they get together to daven. It would seem from Rav Moshe that it doesn't have to be I'm sorry. Rav Moshe holds that the Shulchan Aruch says it has to be a shul. But Rav Moshe is saying if they daven every week on Friday, then that becomes the Friday night shul. I know there's minyanim in town. They call it after the name of the person. It's the Berman minyan, it's the Chop minyan, it's this minyan, that minyan. So it becomes a shul for Friday night. So that's the issue. And I heard the svaras that you people were saying, very good svaras, that maybe if it's controlled by, if it's private property really, the blacktop, and it's controlled by the yeshiva, or the parking lot in the back is controlled by the shul, and we give designated hours. Okay, Lamaisa, bottom line is we're not going to say Megan Avos on the blacktop because it's so many sveikas, and there are posting the passing shenat, so Safek brachos lahakom. Okay, there you have the whole story.
Point of information, the first chief rabbi of Israel was Rav Kook.
That was before the Hakamas Medina.
But it's still considered the first chief rabbi, always mentioned.
You are correct. And Rav Herzog was the first chief rabbi after the Hakamas Medina, right?
Right, but even before. He started in 1936.
And Rav Unterman was after Rav Herzog?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
So I guess they got something right. Okay.
Yeah, but Rabbi, don't call it the blacktop. We're going to get in trouble.
We're worried about that. In my email, I didn't write on the blacktop. I wrote that on the basketball court.
Well, pavement. You were preaching from the pavement.
When you put it in writing, you never know who's going to see it. You got to be more
That's
careful.
right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you,
everybody. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
The Ben Ish Chai lived until 1909. The Ben Ish Chai lived until 1909.
And how old was he?
He was born in 1835.
So he wasn't that old. He was
74.
Okay, but he had a tremendous image. And then he was, Rav Yosef took on himself the battle with the Ben Ish Chai. because the Ben Ish Chai changed a lot of the minhagim in Eretz Yisrael, because he was the greatest Sephardi leader. So not only in Baghdad, but even extended into Eretz Yisrael, they followed the Ben Ish Chai. So whatever it said in the Ben Ish Chai, that's what they were doing in Eretz Yisrael. And when Rabbi Yosef rose to his position of greatness, he felt that the minhag Eretz Yisrael, the authentic minhag, is the minhag of the Beis Yosef.
Maran.
The Maran, yes, and that's what he always said, that he was on mission lahachzer atar liyoshna, to return the crown to its original glory, and therefore he fought on many issues to reverse it, that they go back to the minhag of the Beis Yosef and not follow the later minhagim. I mean, there were two great people, the Ben Ish Chai and the Rabbi Yosef. Both.
Even when he was younger, he started going against the Ben Ish Chai, and he got in trouble for it when he was young.
Yeah. What was he fighting about?
He was giving a shiur, and he said that you shouldn't follow the Ben Ish Chai, you should follow Maran. But he was young, and he got a lot of trouble. He got into trouble.
He got into trouble. I say he has a tshuva about Yibam. I spoke about it once. Yibam. The Sfardim held that you could do Yibam. The Ashkenazim don't do Yibam anymore. The Sfardim held that you could do Yibam, but then they stopped when the Beis Yosef says the Sfardim could do Yibam, but they stopped at a later point of time because of the Ben Ish Chai. So Rabbi Yosef wanted to reverse that. He wanted to make it that the Sfardim should perform Yibam, but he wasn't Matzliach. The majority of the Rabbanim didn't want to go along, so it didn't happen.
All right.
Okay. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
My
Good night.
pleasure.
Nighty night.
Rabbi Luban, you know, the gym in RPRY was a dual purpose. Do you say Hazmana counts? Because when they built it, l'chatchila, they probably built it on that condition. That it should be used for
That it should be used for a shul as well.
the shul. The Aron Kodesh was built in. It wasn't.
Right. There's an Aron Kodesh there. It certainly makes it better that there's an Aron Kodesh there.
Right.
Okay.
Although we used a different one though. OT
Well, it
had
was
its
never
own.
built in. Was the Aron Kodesh built in the gym?
Yeah, we used to open the doors for Shabbos. There were these
There was
padded
the-
doors, and we used to
used
open there for Shabbos.
That's right.
Remember that? Oh, yes.
We
Yeah.
also had a portable one.
Long time
Those
ago.
days.
We
Okay.
used the portable one.
It's the only
Okay.
shul where you can take shots at the shots.
Yeah.
So what about saying Maganov downstairs in the Kiddush room, the social hall? You have another minyan Friday night.
That's a good. Now you're asking another good question. So I thought because it's in a shul, but you're right. It's not used as a shul. It's used as a social hall. So maybe that should depend on the same shiloh. But even though we use it every Shabbos, okay, you're raising a very good question. I have to think about that one.
You should daven in the dungeon
asked you about
upstairs at 7, and then you won't
Yeah,
have
you
a
won't have any
problem.
problem. Oh, but they don't. Oh, you mean now they're davening downstairs
Yeah,
during
but
the?
when the
No, but
virus,
Don't daven
when we do
Marav.
tshuva, there's no more virus.
They don't
We
daven
should
Marav.
think about making the Shabbos.
They
What?
don't daven Marav downstairs the whole year, but just during the
No,
virus.
but
What?
we had this discussion a few years ago when Yom Kippur came on Shabbos.
On Shabbos, and you have the minyan, and you asked me,
I asked you if we should say Maganov downstairs on Yom
and
Kippur
I said
night.
you should.
Said we should.
So there you are. I already passing the shiloh. So what's the question?
Kapaskand.
Okay, I don't know. I have to look. Yeah, raising good question. I believe that I will look into it again. It's a very good question. Okay.
Okay.
Ligo Tov.
Rabbi,
Yes.
Kirchu.
What?
All right, you'll look at the book, you'll get it.
Okay. All right. Fine. Okay. I'm on to it. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.